was said about whether the money has been retrieved from him or whatever.
Okay, now to the Blueprint newspaper. Blueprint newspaper, that's on the right-hand side of the nameplate. We have a CBN calls interest on deposits above 2 billion naira. It's on page 33. Just below that, again, we have a man who accused wife of demanding bribe for sex gets divorced. Well, that's on page 9. Now, Jonathan wants 2014 confab report implemented. It's on page 6. Then ministerial list, Senate still waiting. Buhari holds National Assembly leadership. It's on page 32. The list this morning on Blueprint is illicit financial flows. Bulk of $90 billion exits Africa through Nigeria. With the two riders, continent loses $50 billion to illegal assets. And then federal government saves 10 trillion naira from TSA. It's on page 6. Below the photo story, no plan to increase fuel pump price, says NNPC. With a rider, oil price hits $67 amidst Iran tension. It's on page 34. I will stop Abuja politicians, says Obaseki. That's the governor of Edo State. The full story is on page 23. Zamfara secures release of abducted foreigners, 96 others in 1 week. It's on page 5. Gombe EFCC convicts 53, recovers over 90 million in 7 months. Page 16 is where you get that story. Ibadopoli destroys 1,000 phones over exam malpractices. It's on page 15. Let's return to Bayo now.
There's this story you read about former President Goodluck Jonathan at a book launch yesterday. He made critical recommendations. He advocated that presidents be stripped of the powers to single-handedly appoint the commissioners and the chairman of the Independent Electoral Commission. He was speaking at a book launch by Senator Femi Okuromu yesterday. He said confidence in the electoral process is very vital for democracy too of every nation. He opined that though he appointed such INEC members, Nigeria's democratic process will not progress if it continues. He therefore advocated for a separate institutions, citing some countries that have constitutional courts or some that have set up independent tribunal controlled by the judiciary as a means of that. He also enjoined President Muhammadu Buhari to immediately implement the recommendations of the 2014 National Conference, which he instituted while he was in power. You will recall that the National Conference was inaugurated on 12 March with 492 members. After 5 months, it presented a report to then President Goodluck Jonathan on 21st August 2014. Therein, the conference had made 3 critical recommendations, which also can be categorized into 3 compartments. Administrative recommendations, which the executive then could have implemented outrightly. There was also the legislative component, which required an executive bill to be sent to the National Assembly. The 3rd component required constitutional amendment, which unfortunately up to May 29, 2015, when he left office, neither was implemented. But he has now recommended strongly, enjoined President Muhammadu Buhari to jettison political considerations and implement it to take the country out of the woods.
All right, Bayo, let's take the editorial, and it's coming from the Nigerian Pilot. The title of the editorial, Deporting Nigerians and Implications for Our International Image.
Well, the editorial is for the Nigerian Pilot, and it's talking about the impact of deportation of Nigeria from other countries and the implications for the image of our nation. And it goes the memory lane to cite particularly the recent skirmishes in Ghana regarding deportations. And he says that as far back as 1969, Ghana had what they call the Alien Compliance Order, which Nigerians were expelled. And then in 1983, President Shehu Shagari signed Nigeria's executive order, which also saw most aliens, particularly from West Africa, and majority of them, about 2 million, were from Ghana, that they had to be expelled from Nigeria. And he poses a question, why are Nigerians migrating from this blessed country to other countries, and particularly to Ghana too, for education, for business, and for tourism? And it is found no reason other than the fact that such persons are going for greener pastures, and therefore there should be initiative to create businesses, to create jobs, so as to get vibrant Nigerians who cannot sit idle to be preoccupied and get engaged. Idle hands, they say, is the devil's workshop. Currently, what is happening is a lack of employment becomes an impetus for illegal immigration.
Well, when you said lack of employment, you know, in some cases, those of them that leave Nigeria for whatever greener pasture in question spend a lot of money. Yeah. Money that could start a business in Nigeria. Well, so if
somebody is trying to run to Italy, trying to run to anywhere in
you have over $1 million
and he has to pay a middleman about 1.4 million.
Exactly.
To
and
get there.
If you have that kind of money, so
and
why
go
are you
and enter into slavery? While if he had actually used that 1.4 million to do some business in Nigeria, he could get something out of it.
Exactly.
No doubt about that. No doubt about that. But, you know, the presumption is they look at the stories of one or two successful persons, you know, successful in the neighborhood, yeah, who, of course, on account of the fact that they are now abroad, they repatriate some hard currency. Once you change the hard currency, you see the quantum. Oh, he's been able to build a house for his mother. He's been able to do this for his family. So I will also take my chance and then go there. You don't know the risk the person is taking. You don't know the hazards that person is going through.
It's the same thing as somebody who is doing well in Nigeria. There are people who are doing well here. There are those who are not doing well. You know, maybe so. It's something abroad. So they think that when you get there, all the advantage of this world, you know, is just in your pocket, that you can get things done easily and come back. But most of them go there, of course, get jailed.
The irony is that there are some foreigners who come to Nigeria and they wonder at the wonderful opportunities that are there, but we Nigerians cannot see it.
Well, we are seeing it. That's why you are still here. I'd like to thank you for being around.
Thank you
of course, by the time the program returns on Monday, that's the municipal segment, Nigeria would have
qualified.
Nigeria would have taken on Algeria.
Yes.
For the semi-finals.
I don't know about qualifying. We're taking on Nigeria since
they would have taken on Algeria. So we wish Super Eagles all the very best. I believe so.
With the Super Eagles, I'm ever an eternal optimist.
Okay, bye. Thanks for being around.
Thank you.
Enjoy your weekend. All right, it's still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Today we are discussing male infertility. We already have our experts and they'll be joining us shortly.
They are there at the crack of dawn. They are there busy preparing while we rise for our day. They are there silently, guarding, waiting, listening, and watching. They are there ready in the sky above and the waters below, in the blistering heat of the day, in the dead of night, willing, indefatigable, determined in the defense of the sovereignty of our country. They are our first line of defense and our last. They who have paid the ultimate price in defending us. They are fathers and uncles. They are mothers and sisters and girlfriends and boyfriends. They are brothers and cousins and best friends and neighbors. They are classmates, colleagues, and citizens of this nation. They are our defenders and deserve our respect, our prayers, our thoughts. Nigeria, please support our armed forces.
I can taste the real chicken. Real chicken.
Don't worry, Abba. It's your chicken.
It's the Supreme Chicken Essence that gives it the supreme chicken taste. Be Supreme, Nigeria.
One football confederation, 24 teams, 6 stadiums, 4 cities, 504 African stars, 1 trophy. The Africa Cup of Nations Egypt 2019 comes alive from June 21 with the two-piece final on July 19, 2019. Watch the 52 matches of the tournament live on Africa's biggest and largest television network, NTA, in partnership with Heart Sports. Be part of the biggest soccer fiesta in the African continent as the Super Eagles go on a bold mission to clinch the prestigious title for the 4th time, to the excitement of millions of fans across the length and breadth of Nigeria. For inquiries, please contact Abubakar on 0803-331-0175, Felix on 0803-308-2375. NTA, you can't beat the rich.
Our country is filled with people with different skills. And like the game football, we all have a position to play. And the strikers, they are the go-getters. They break barriers and steal the show. To win, we must come together as one team. We must play as Nigeria United.
And we thank you for staying with us up to this moment on this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. Well, of course, our guests are already seated. But before we get them introduced, let's get this background report.
Statistics from the National Infertility Association shows that infertility affects 15% of couples globally, which amounts to 48.5 million couples, with men found to be exclusively responsible for 20 to 30% of infertility cases worldwide. The causes range from sperm disorder, genital abnormalities, erection dysfunction to heredity. This analysis has negated the general perception that women are always responsible for infertility among couples. Like other health conditions, there are remedies. The treatment can be in form of prescription by qualified medical personnel, surgery, while a change of lifestyle has been said to also be an antidote. Are there enough andrologists, that is, specialists in treating infertility in male, to attend to this challenge? Most times, urologists are consulted for solutions to deal with problems of reproductive system in men. What is the level of awareness on infertility in men?
It's good for men to open up in a situation in such circumstances, because if you don't speak out, definitely there won't be solution. So you speak out to people you know that can counsel you rightly.
Male infertility is a reality, and those who are infertile among the males should open up, because there are so many researches going on around the world now to put an end to such amongst men. And also they need to open up, because it's also causing serious instability in homes too.
People are not aware because of the African society or the culture. You know, when a man marries and is not able, and the wife is not able to take in, the problem is pushed to the women. The society always feel women are the ones that are not able to give birth.
Concerning male infertility, be sincere, in the African setup, we women have not been given a very fair chance. It is always the woman that is infertile, not the man. But in reality, to it, the male, they really have a problem.
Further questions to be asked are: can infertility in men be prevented? How accessible and affordable is the medical treatment to men's infertility? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria are earnestly waiting to provide answers.
All right, thank you very much, Kunle Adeye, for that background, of course, which went by the way of a Vox Pop. Now we have our guests with us in the studios. First, let's welcome a very familiar face on the program, Dr. Ibrahim Wada, who is Vice Chairman of NISA and Garike Group of Hospitals, but is also President, Association for Fertility and Reproductive Health in Nigeria. Dr. Wada, pleasure to have you again.
Good morning, Nigeria. Pleased to be here.
Okay, we also have with us in the studios Dr. Mohudu Idoku, is Medical Director, Society for Family Health. Pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Good Morning Nigeria, Nigerians.
All right, we now introduce Dr. Idorin Cletus Abaya. He's a consultant urologist, surgery department, just University Teaching Hospital. We thank you for being here this morning.
I'm pleased to be here.
All right, and then Sam Smar is a professor of sociology. He's also here with us in the studio. We're glad to have you join us this morning on the show.
Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Kirian, last but not the least, Dr. Dr. Kayode Obende is Medical Director, Fresh Springs Fertility Center, also based in Abuja here. Dr. Obende, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right, so let's just take it from perhaps the very elementary level. What is male infertility?
Yeah, it's where the man contributes to the problem of infertility, either by not being able to deposit seeds in his wife, or the quality of the seeds he deposits does not match what we call normal standards. So by that means, he's contributing to the event of infertility, which means he and his partner for a year or more have been struggling and trying to have a pregnancy or a child and have failed to do so. And where we examine the man, test the man, and we find certain things are wrong, we call that male infertility. The particular thing that can be wrong, usually, is that his sperm quality, the water that comes out of him, has not as many sperms that are active or normal as they should be. And as the discussion goes, we're going to try and define what is that normality. But male infertility means the man is found to be a major factor in the fact that he and his wife have not been able to have a child for more than a year trying.
All right, let's ask Dr. Kayode Obende, who is of the Fresh Spring Fertility Center, to also give us his own perspective of, infertility in men.
Yeah, infertility is a couple problem. The contribution can be from the woman, it can be from the man, and it can also be a joint problem. Now, where the man is involved, we found, in our society, it's presumed that it's always the woman that is at fault. But we found out that in about at least 30% of cases, the male factor is the problem. Now, we found this because more men are coming up to do investigations, and the quality of semen generally is reducing by the day due to so many reasons. Now, after they've come up, the investigations done, we find out that some men may also not accept the results of the investigations, but generally it is known that male factor is real and is with us in Nigeria.
All right, let's also get the views of Dr. Omokudu by Idoho.
Thank you. I think in terms of male infertility, it's very much about a couple issue and the contribution that the man brings on the table. And it does vary in terms of percentage, but my co-panelists have actually described, 90% tends to come from more of the quality of the semen. So it's either there's no sperm, or there's low sperm, or the shape of the sperm and the ability for the sperm to move has a problem. Then there are other 10%, which are other ancillary factors. And generally, it ranges from 1 in, say, 4 cases, if you're looking at a couple, to sometimes, depending on the distance, you say 2 to 1 in 3. So between 25 to 33, 40%, depending on the particular area you're looking at. And there are many causes, which I'm sure we'll go into. Some of them very preventable, some of them lifestyle change, some of them require more sort of deeper surgical sort of procedure. But I think clearly from our perspective, as an organization, knowing is the starting point. And I think it's important that we're having this conversation to actually now put it in the public space, that when there are issues around infertility, it's not just a woman problem, it's actually a couple problem, and the man does make very significant contribution, putting a gendered face to some of the conversation.
Yeah, Dr. Baya, what are other inevitability factors?
Well, when we are looking at male infertility, certainly, my colleagues have mentioned so many things. But what we need to also talk about is that the couple live together and they've been involved in regular unprotected sexual intercourse. I choose my words carefully because, you know, if the woman is having any form of contraception, that would not be infertility. So in terms of looking at the causations or the causes of male infertility, clearly the testes is where the sperm are produced, and this is what a man requires to get the wife to conceive. And so if the testis is so affected that it is, or they are, because of two testes, unable to produce sperm, that is where infertility comes in, you know. Or if those sperm are not transported to where they should be in the female, tract, genital tract, that is where infertility comes in. And so things that affect a man not to be able to produce sperm are so many, you know. And so when a man comes to the hospital, we try to evaluate them to find the causes of those things. But commonly, you find that, you know, if a man has had maybe some kind of infection, right, particularly, you know, those STDs, and then they affect the testes in such a way that they cannot produce sperm again, then that can lead to infertility. Sometimes there are environmental factors, you know. If someone is exposed to radiation for any reason at all, you know, and it affects, you know, his ability or his testes' ability to produce sperm, then those can also, you know, any kind of injury, any kind of infection, you know. There are instances where, you know, as young people, as teenagers, you know, men have or had moms, you know, mom otitis, you know, this could affect the testes, could also, you know, the kind of a viral infection, it could also lead to inability of the testes to produce, you know, a sperm, and that could lead to male infertility. Now, the other thing, aspect, the other arm, and there are other things. The other arm I talked about is inability of those sperm to be transported to where they are needed, you know, in the female tract, you know. So, so things like infection again could block the channel that leads the sperm out to the female tract, you know. Things like, you know, gonorrheal infection, you know, could lead to this blockage of the tract that leads the sperm out. Things like congenital problem, those are things that, you know, someone is born with. And things like blocking the channel of urine itself, you know, can also cause this problem. And there are many other factors. And so when someone comes to the hospital, it is our duty to, you know, take all the things into consideration and look for what the causes are, you know, as it were.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Akpaya. Before we bring in Professor Samsma, let's still explore the medical issues surrounding all of this. Dr. Ibrahim Wada, earlier you said, look, there are many certain factors, and Dr. Akpaya, of course, has ticked up some of them. What other factors could cause male infertility?
I mean, the lifestyle probably is one of the key ones. I mean, we used to be told when we were young that wearing tight pants, which compresses your testes, may compromise blood supply and weaken them. Also, if you work in a very hot environment, like people are driving trailers, people in Goldsmith, or how do you call those people in front of fires and all that, and they're exposed to heat for a long time. And this calls to God's ingenuity, or whatever big word you can use to describe why he put the testes outside. The women have similar things that produce their eggs, but they are hidden out inside, because the man's testis is so active that it must be cooled all the time. So anytime you expose it to prolonged heat, you reduce its ability to function properly. And that's where you hear things like varicose veins too. Those veins are like baggy veins dilated around the testes, and they keep it too warm that it's unable to really, the factory becomes inefficient. So what it produces is few, what it produces is weak, what it produces is not looking normal. So when the man ejaculates, what's coming out of him is too weak to allow his wife to get pregnant. So social lifestyle of heavy smoking, drinking too much, using drugs, abuse of drugs, etc., etc., overindulgence, even the stress of life when you don't give your brain time to let go, because the brain controls everything. Even these sperm productions we're saying is from hormones coming from the brain to tell the testes what to do. So this complete lifestyle situation can put a man in trouble in terms of fertility.
All right, Kingsley, let's go to Sam Amma. Sam is a professor of sociology, so he will not be talking to us from a medical point of view. So it has become a societal problem, and it has brought a disharmony among couples, and also in some cases broken homes. What is the social implication of this, and how can it be managed in a society where we have couples without the fruit of the womb, and that's attributed to infertility?
Well, thank you very much. You've already said so that it's a social problem, it's a societal problem, and as infertility amongst men is, so you see a lot of stigmatization amongst the population. A man that is not able to impregnate his wife, in many places is regarded as a woman rapper, or is wata wata, you know. So all those stigmatizations actually produce some negative reactions. And so if you check from the very small societies to very complex societies like where we are in the industrial world, you have a lot of societal attitudes that have tended to negatively affect the mindset of men who naturally or who do have medical problems that could be corrected in the hospitals with the doctors, as we have them here this morning. So it's actually a very big problem, and this problem spreads across societies, spreads across nations, and particularly here in Africa and Nigeria in particular, we find cases of issues that relate to this. If, for example, a man is not able to raise children after a year or so, the medical people say a year of unprotected sex without pregnancy shows infertility. And most times, women have actually been in the limelight, actually negating the fact of the possibilities that both partners, both couples could share in the problems. So a case that could be corrected medically, because of the social stigmatization, you just find that men just hide their problems. And because they hide these problems, they're not able to come to the hospital, they're not able to go for investigation, and so the society keeps believing that it is the woman that is responsible, because our cultural beliefs, our cultural mindset, our attitude towards social or public problems like this usually blames somebody. And here, with a male-dominated society, a male-dominated culture, the victim definitely is a woman. And this has a lot of implications. One is what I said before. The man doesn't have the confidence to go to the hospital to check himself. And then families begin to now look the other way around that setting. In traditional societies, you find parents have to check the tutor. You have to say, where is your husband coming from? Where is your wife coming from? They see that in that family, they don't give birth, so don't go there. Right? So no matter what you do, they will not give you their blessing, because they know that they have been taking trends. This would be something that would have been corrected all along, if not of the fact that males have been stigmatized, that family would have been stigmatized. And then, of course, it comes to the real family life, where husband and wife now live together. They are confronted with this problem. Every morning they wake up, they find themselves childless, and with this factor, with the expectation that society has, look, when you get married in the next 12 months, you come for naming ceremony. And that is not happening. In fact, even before 5 months, people are beginning to ask questions. Why is her stomach not coming out? What kind of man are you? You know, and with that, you just find that, okay, somebody ran this thing to my brain before. In your culture, in your family, women don't give birth. And that becomes a big problem, conflict of different magnitude, families coming with their interpretations, communities coming with their interpretations, and before you know it, a divorce is very, very rare. They're facing you. And with divorces, you find, again, if somebody goes out and marries another person, you actually have children. So, which means that something was wrong before. And if only time was taken to sort out what that problem is, this problem would have been avoided. And so you find a lot of crises in the society, crisis of identity, crisis of association. And these in themselves do not go well for the progress of our society.
Okay, Professor Samsma, thank you very much. You know, you were saying something among others about how some busybodies, you know, will be examining the woman and seeing whether there is a bulge, you know, in her tummy or otherwise, and then wondering what the man has done. In some cases, when the bulge starts, usually in the first few weeks, you know, the women have a way of also concealing it. You know, when they tie their wrapper, they will put a wallet in front so that you will be mistaking the bulge for the wallet rather than what's actually it is. I'm sure that that's another thing that we can take a look at, because some places will say, look, if you show it too early, witches might come and tamper with it. I think it's important for us to clarify something here for the benefit of our viewers. Is male infertility same as erectile dysfunction?
No.
Because, you know, the stigma that arises, I mean, if a man, I would like you to explain, the stigma that arises is if a man believes that he has erection and then, you know, he can ejaculate, so why do I have a problem? Dr. Bende.
Okay, now the process of producing sperm takes like an average of 72 days. Now the sperm is produced in the balls, in the testicles, and it talked of transportation. Now you can have a situation where there is no sperm production and you have erection. So what you are actually, the ejaculate is void of sperm cells. Now you can also have a situation where there is sperm production but is not delivered into the semen. So the ejaculate will also be void. You can also have a situation where the sperm is delivered, but the quantity or the functionality of the sperm cells are not adequate. So a man can have good erection, but not be able, still have male infertility because what he's delivering is not adequate. Now, you can also have a situation where the man has good sperm cell formation, but he does not have adequate erection, or is not able to deposit the semen up into the vagina. Is also a challenge. That is where you now talk of erectile dysfunction. Now, they are kind of interrelated in the sense that if you have erectile dysfunction, it can lead to male infertility. Now, male infertility can also cause erectile dysfunction because of the stress involved and so many other things. Then you also have an entity, premature ejaculation. The man has erection, but before he even gets to where this semen will be useful, he spills it out. And so the target is not met. So these things are interrelated. He talked about the issue of busybodies. Busybodies can be helpful and they can also be toxic. It can be helpful to make you seek help. Because if after 1 year there is nothing coming up, somebody asks you a question, it can advise you to look for solution. But you find some people that are just complacent. 2 years, 3 years, nothing happens. And they are just there. So the erectile dysfunction, male infertility, they are different, but they are also interrelated.
Well, that entire relationship is a very big question. I just had the producer, talking about the fact that those busybodies also have their own nuisance value, in this connection. But let's look at this from another point of view. What are the signs? Are there any signs at all?
I'm sorry, before we go to the signs, I think it's important to clarify this because, see, a man probably would assume, I'm just assuming that, look, if he doesn't have ED, which is short for erectile dysfunction, then he has no problem. But so what is that link? I would like other medical experts to also speak to this in terms of ED, in terms of early ejaculation, and then poor sperm production, and so on and so forth. Before you get to the early signs,
I think I have a point there. But what Dr. Bender has explained, if I understood him, it's quite clear, right? And perhaps we'll ask Wada to come in here on that. Let's hear from you.
Okay, well, the situation of you have a good erection, but your wife, and you ejaculate and your wife cannot get pregnant. Some of it, we call it firing blanks. If I point a gun at you and shoot, and there's no live bullet in my gun, I cannot harm you. It's the same when a man is azoospermic. He has no sperms at all. Everything else about him looks perfect. He can meet his wife well, release well, but he's putting nothing in blanks. So we have to understand that one. The second part is a normal man who cannot achieve erection or ejaculation. The two are not the same. There are unejaculatory men that can be at the job for a long time, nothing can come out of them. Over a long time, that can frustrate the fertility situation. Similarly, a man who has erectile dysfunction, as my colleague has well described it, it may not be an absolute cause of infertility, but it's a contribution.
Okay.
All right, I think it's clear now. Before a man will begin to, have these issues, it has to be after marriage. Yeah. That is when the thing becomes serious. But this is a man who grew up, from kindergarten, up to the mature level where he now begins to, get married. So we need to know within this period how early in life of a male can this be detected? Is it when he becomes sexually active, or can that be detected early in life before he becomes sexually active? Let's bring in Dr. Abuja here.
Okay, thank you. The features could come in early, but it's not something that people pay real attention to, like you said, until they get married. But when they come to the hospital, usually when the problem becomes obvious, that the man is not able to impregnate his wife, then he comes to the hospital. Then we discover that those things were even there before now. In other words, there are things that could be there even when he was born, and so there are things that people are born with that can affect fertility, okay? And then you look at the person, he's never had a woman pregnant before. His wife is not pregnant as well. These are questions we ask, and you also realize that there's some features in him that looks, a bit unclear. For instance, there are some congenital problems, and these are things that people are born with that makes the man, the external genitalia, the penis, the testes, not well developed. You see, so when you examine the patient, you realize that his penis is not well developed, and this could be due to the fact that he has not, he doesn't have enough quantity of male hormones, and the male hormone, the testosterone, allow you to develop, well. For instance, a man's voice, it's supposed to be deep, when he becomes a teenager. And you notice that his voice is not deep enough. He's talking to you, his voice is sounding like a woman's own, And you look at him, he's a man, he's in his 20s, he's in his 30s, and he has not got beards. These are the features, it becomes obvious to you that, probably there's something wrong developmentally. Do you understand? And you further examine, you notice that the normal male characteristics are not there. And so these are all features that can help you, say, maybe this problem is due to the man. And the other thing is that, yes, it could look normal, but, other things that we talked about that came in later after he developed and looked normal. So he could look like, obviously, like, a man, but when we examine him carefully, maybe infection came in, you examine the testes, you notice that there are features there clinically, that suggest that he has got maybe his testes, there was an injury, or maybe there's an obstruction there, And so those are the things that we look at that may suggest that there's a male infertility.
Yes,
yeah, you can come in there. We can come in there, please.
I think just to also add that clearly, even as we grow through life, there are things like my colleagues have actually flagged there that we need to be aware of. Infections, some of the easier ones are infections. We have a big sort of epidemic of chlamydia in the country, and not many men present to be treated for chlamydia. We have gonorrhea. So a lot of time when you pass junction, you hear things like staph, come and treat staph. Often what they're actually talking about is a chlamydia infection, but chlamydia is hard to actually pick up in the lab. So they term it staph. So
they say don't let staph kill you.
Yes, it's a very common thing, and they are selling all kinds of drugs, concussions at the junction. So again, it's how seriously we take the whole sexual health, sexual wellness component of our lives, so that every infection you pick potentially is a risk factor that is down the line may translate. Lifestyle, the amount of tobacco you take. Of course, in addition to some of the things he's flagged, that for example, you may have a newborn baby that has undescended testes, so the testes don't come down. So again, in good practice, medical practice, we normally check those things quickly. But even very active mothers will also check to say is the testes down. Sometimes there are issues around testicular torsion. So what it means is the child comes with some very serious pain. For example, just last week, a family member actually called. The child was in school and has had pain for almost a week on his testes, and they didn't bother calling him, only to call him on Saturday. Of course, he brought the kid to town, but his testes was already dead. So they will go in, so that testis is out. So these are signs. These are like signposts that if you don't manage clearly somewhere down the line, it's a problem waiting to happen.
Dr. Wada.
And thank you very much for pointing out the undescended testes in children, because if you don't relieve them quickly, they'll also burn out. Yeah. Testes are not supposed to be inside. Undescended means it has remained inside rather than inside the scrotum. It hasn't entered the scrotum. So this, once detected, must be repositioned quickly, otherwise, there are consequences, infertility, cancer, whatever. So I'm glad you added that. There are also some children born whose urethral opening are in the wrong place. Hypospadia, as you guys call it. So these ones too, they need to be reconstructed so that the sperm goes the right way. Otherwise, it will be difficult for such a child to grow and not have some fertility challenges. There's one group that we have not talked about, thankfully not common, chromosomal problems. We've heard of Klinefelter males, although they have typical features of such people, tall, a little bit feminine in the outlook, but there is no sperm production, or hardly any sperm production. This is a chromosomal aberration that I thank God is not so common. Klinefelter
Well,
syndrome.
so again, it's almost like a biology class, but I'm just wondering, for the benefit of our viewers, when we talk about sperm production, there is the semen, it's the slippery or slimy, and then the sperm, of course, is the one that has the ingredients, for procreation. What we learned, I don't know whether the knowledge has changed, was that, nature itself is very wasteful, that you need only one spermatozoon. I think zoon is singular, zoa is a plural, to fertilize an egg. But that in the process of intercourse, a man could ejaculate millions and millions, and most of them die off or die out. So if it's only one you need, why would it be a challenge?
Now, the others kind of assist the preferred
full soldiers.
Yes, to do the job. Now, it is not about the volume of ejaculates. Like we said, the final ejaculate should be a combination of the sperm cells and the semen. Now, if that mixture is not there, or if the sperm does not get to the semen, what comes out is meaningless. So it's not about, I mean, there are two different things altogether.
Well, I'm not clear. If you need only one sperm to fertilize an egg, so why, and then each time there are millions that are coming out, why would it be a problem?
I think there are some men who just don't have any.
No, I think
that's one. But it's also in terms of there's a certain volume you need to actually achieve that, because there's a certain traction. Yes, there's wastage, but if that sort of numbers go down, then the sort of the probability factor also decreases. I think that's what then drives infertility.
You want to add to that? The sperm is deposited in the vagina. Now the vagina is acidic. Most of the sperm spill out or they flow out after they are deposited in the vagina. Now you have barriers along the way. The vagina is acidic. Some sperm are killed in the vagina. Now you have the cervical mucus. Some sperm are slowed down in the vaginal mucus, and then they have to go all the way. So the number that really gets to the final destination is just about maybe less than 1/3 of what you produce. And you need the others to contribute 1 or 2 chemicals to the egg before the final one can penetrate.
Dr. Wada?
Yes, I think we are getting there. The sperm needs somewhere between 20 and 50,000 sperms to surround her. I will use the word her because she's female, the sperm. I mean the egg.
The egg for that matter. Tube, yeah.
So until nature produces this army around this beautiful lady called the egg, that signal for one to go in will not be given. So you may have a low sperm count, you push in 5,000 or 10,000, the egg will look and say you've not started. Try again next month.
So the person may have, the person may have a low sperm count.
Yeah, the man may have a low sperm count.
Okay.
And by the time all these processes Dr. Bende has described has happened, only 5,000 sperms go there. The sperm is still looking.
The egg is still looking.
The egg is still looking, I'm sorry. So it's a choosy being. It's a beautiful lady that waits for so many suitors to come before giving herself to one of the sperms. So that's why nature is the most wondrous thing. When you look at the actual game of fertilization, it is too choosy. It's more choosy than a teenage girl looking for a suitor here.
So the sperm has to have the right quality before the beautiful lady, or quantity and quality before it can be accepted.
Before it can persuade the sperm to go in. Now, it doesn't mean that men with low sperm count cannot make their wives pregnant. It's a probability game. So if you got a normal one and your wife can get pregnant once every 6 months or something like that, if you're abnormal, it may be 1 out of 20 months or 1 out of 30 months. We have to recognize that.
Okay, let's bring in a sociologist, the sociologist among us here, Professor Simon. Are there counseling services for couples affected by infertility? And let us know those peculiarities about the health-seeking behavior of Nigerian men.
Oh, thank you so much. Let me say that the culture that informs the health institutions all over the world have actually narrowed down everything to female fertility. So in most hospitals, and if you check all these respected medical experts here, their services are mostly targeted towards women, because that's what the culture says. It's women that have the problem. So in reality, you have very rare medical facilities or institutions or establishments that have even medical schools, specializations for treating male infertility. So with that, the whole thing goes back into the society that you will not really have places where men can actually go and evaluate themselves. Because of that, I can say that, well, maybe as urbanization, progresses, as industrialization progresses, of course, in the post-industrial setting, you have all sorts of specialties now. So in that case, yes, you can find medical facilities that can have specialized doctors, specialized experts that treat male infertility problems. So, of course, I can say that there are, but not that well featured in Africa, not well that featured in Nigeria. I'm not sure there is any facility that is specifically for male. Even though you can go in as a most times they say, come with your husband, right? The woman has to come with her husband. It's not the man, come with your wife. And so it reduces the whole thing to a women's syndrome. And this is what society should try to change. Medical curriculum should actually bring the male issue in and should encourage doctors to specialize in this field. And because the situation, in fact, I read a report from University of Calabar Teaching Hospital that says even the chances of infertility is now 50-50 between male and female. So it's actually a growing phenomenon that we can't fall down and culturally stigmatize women. We need to create the framework right from society. Everyone should accept that these are problems that both couples may likely encounter, and then find solutions to them in terms of creating institutions, in terms of even making men to accept the fact that you could actually be this problem and not the woman. And once that is done, we are 50 way to solving the problems, because the rest will be cultural, the rest will be stigmatization issues, the rest will not be isolation issues, and of course the other component of the question is, sorry, what is it again?
No, we're talking about the attitude of men.
Yes.
When it comes to
Okay, that's right.
available at the hospital.
That's right. Again, goes back to values, goes back to belief system, it goes back to the etiquette of men and what their perceptions are about themselves and about what they were put through when they were growing up. Okay, and so men should change their attitude presently. We have enough evidence from laboratories to show that men equally have problems, and we should accept it and be free about it. I think the thing I want to really emphasize strongly is that we should remove stigma, we should remove shyness, if you like to put it that way, and accept the fact that you could be the problem, and then also men discuss this freely in their clubs, in their meetings, in their places of work. Your wife cannot get pregnant over a period of time. Make it a public discussion. It should not be a private issue, because it affects society, it affects your family, it affects your friends, it affects your brothers and your sisters, and other people who want to marry your younger ones, your siblings, they will tell them they don't give birth there, so don't go there. So, but once I think we normalize the discussion, the conversation should be on both sides, and I think that helps a lot. So men should encourage themselves, and doctors should encourage men to come forward and get tested and get evaluated. And of course, mothers should also play a role here. From what I hear the doctors saying, if women are well educated, mothers are well educated, you give birth to a baby that doesn't seem to sink, right? Seek attention early enough. That will save your body from future embarrassment.
Okay, Professor Smart, thank you very much. I still want to back up a bit and return to some of these concepts that are used interchangeably, and whether there might be a misconstruction with regard to male infertility. some days ago on Good Morning Nigeria, probably on Tuesday, when we were discussing Nigeria's booming population, some of the tweets that came in suggested vasectomy. Now, what does vasectomy do? And what does castration do? Because it was said in the past that if the king had a harem and there were male palace guards for that harem, the men were usually castrated. And therefore, who is a eunuch? What's, you know, being a eunuch, be undertaking vasectomy and also being castrated? What do all of this mean?
Yes, thank you. Vasectomy is a medical word that means, you know, ligating or cutting off the vas deferens. And the vas deferens is actually the tube. We talk about tubes in women, you know, it's more popular. But you know, men also have tube. And so all the transportation of the sperm from the testes or from the balls, if you like, that we've been talking about, when a man meets a woman, the transportation process is from the testes through this particular tube called the vas deferens, and then through the channel of the urine itself, and then it goes into the female genitals, right? Okay, so if for any reason we initiate a medical or a surgical process to cut off that tube, the vas deferens, that is what vasectomy is. And you know, there are two of them because you know you have two testes. So for some reason, for a form of contraception, male contraception, this procedure can be undertaken, you know, by a qualified personnel, medical personnel, you know, so that the transportation process is abrogated, as it were, you know, and it is a form of medical contraception. And so again, this is not something that is so popular, and so that's why the word is not so clear to many people. But you know, it is something that is practiced commonly abroad, you know.
And it doesn't have an implication for ED.
Sorry, it does socially. In China, communist China in the 1930s, there was this policy of one family, one child. And part of it was to make males undergo vasectomy. And the cultural implication of that, the social implication of that was too much. Okay, too much to say that, okay, all men are all the same like women. You can't make a woman, you can't get a woman pregnant anymore because Chinese policies want to reduce the number of the population, and of course that didn't work. It didn't work.
Okay, but what is castration, and then who is a eunuch?
Yeah, so the castration is different from vasectomy. Now, when we use the word castration, it means the two testes. Now, the balls that you find in men, they are called testes, are removed. That is castration, you know. And
in that case, the person becomes infertile.
In that case, the person becomes infertile, completely infertile.
But this is not a commonly practiced thing in Africa.
No, at all.
It's not a common practice. So let's not go further on.
I'm sorry. It's an important point.
It is not a practice.
I'm saying, look, get this clear. Vas deferens is a medical procedure.
Yes.
To abridge, you know, fertility. Right. Now, what is the purpose of castration?
The castration we do usually, you know, to treat other medical problems. Okay. Yes. For instance, in our practice, in urology practice, they are men, you know, not young men, usually about 50 sometimes, you know, they develop prostate cancer. Okay? And prostate cancer feeds the cells of the prostate that become cancerous, feeds on the male hormone, the testosterone, produced by the testes. Okay? And so
Doctor, let me stop you there. It's a good lecture anyway. For us to have that deep understanding of what castration is. But we are more focused on this issue of infertility and how we can get out of it. And when we return after this break, we'll be looking at how a man can increase his fertility and what are those lifestyle factors that will play a role in fertility in men. This is a Good Morning Nigeria, and we're taking on a very important topic this morning. So stay with us. When we come back, we'll continue with the conversation.
Our country is filled with people with different skills. And like the game football, we all have a position to play. Some are in charge of protection. They keep the line safe from attackers. They are the defenders. To win, we must come together as one team. We must play as Nigeria united.
Chief, good morning, sir. You are here already?
No, now my spirit there, my body there for house. What kind of question is that? Were you not the one that fixed this meeting for 8 a.m.? You are now coming by 10 a.m. and start asking me jab questions.
But Chief, now, I'm sorry. Don't you also go late for meetings sometimes? You know now, African time.
No more African time. And no more pancaking of face during office hours. At the end of the day, we will lose valuable time. We will not make progress. If we want to move this nation forward, we must treat business as business and respect time. Change begins with me.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Can we go for the meeting now, Chief?
Better.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right. Well, you're welcome back. Well, of course, we had explanations on this issue of castration, and I believe that we understood, Doctor, when he actually spoke about that from different perspectives. But if there are other issues remaining on that, I'd like to bring back Dr. again to look at that. If there are issues or other things you need to raise concerning castration.
Oh, thank you very much. Like I was trying to explain, it is a procedure you do to, as a form of male contraceptive or male contraception. It's not commonly done, but it is done rather as a medical or surgical treatment for men with prostate cancer, advanced prostate cancer, okay? Because like I was trying to explain to you earlier, the prostate cancer feeds on the male hormones, which is produced by the testes. That's the testosterone. And so, we know that if we remove the testes, we take away the hormones. And so if we take away the hormones, the cancer cell dies off. And that is where we do castration commonly, for men. For
treatment.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Akpayak. Another issue that I would like to raise, it is often also commonly said that women have menopause. By the time they are menopausal, it reduces chances of conception. Do men also have their own male menopause, and therefore does that become a factor in male infertility?
Thank you very much. So this is another aspect, and what we usually, or some people usually call andropause. Okay? What happens when a man gets beyond 40 to the 50 is slightly different from what happens when a woman gets to the age of menopause. There are subtle changes that occur in a man, which is not as drastic in terms of fertility as it does in a woman. When a woman gets into menopause, what we know clearly is that the eggs, that are in reproduction, becomes, they reduce dramatically in number, and therefore the woman is not able to have children. But in men, this is slightly different. The sperm, the testes continue to produce sperm, and indeed in enough quantity. But what may happen in those men is that the quality of the sperm or the semen may reduce. The incidence or the frequency of occurrence of congenital problems, okay, may increase. In other words, if a man, say above 50, 60, have a child, the chances of that man having a child that is abnormal or have some abnormality increases remarkably. I also want to say this, that, as a boy grows into a man, okay, at the age of 25, okay, his fertility is at the peak, 24, 25. So also with women, right? Okay, but as he grows beyond 25, okay, his fertility reduces gradually, progressively. In women, it reduces much faster. And so by the age of 35, by the age of 40, a woman may stop having children. But that's not so in men. And so the concept of menopause in men is not as classically described as you find in women.
All right, thank you very much indeed. Now let's go to Dr. Kayode Obede. This question is on whether one can reverse infertility. Is it reversible? If it is, what are the processes?
Well, I would like to say with technology, there is about no type of infertility that cannot be addressed. The type of solution may not be acceptable to some, but I believe that for every form of infertility, there is a solution. Now, in terms of male infertility, we can give supplements to boost sperm production, and we have found this to work in some cases. Also, lifestyle changes for those who are into drugs, smoking, cigarette smoking, use of social drug, marijuana, and so on and so forth. If they change their lifestyle, it can also help to an extent. Now, for those who have very poor sperm quality, there are so many things that can be done. You have artificial insemination, use of like what we call intrauterine insemination, where you help the sperm halfway, that you deposit treated sperm into the womb instead of leaving it in the vagina. Like I said earlier, if you put it in the vagina, some flow out, some are delayed along the way, but you can actually help the process by doing intrauterine insemination, what we call IUI. And then also in vitro fertilization helps a lot. Now, for those who have very poor sperm quality, there's what you do, what we call ICSI, intracytoplasmic sperm injection, where you get eggs from the woman, and then you pick a particular sperm and forcefully inject it into that egg. And you find some men that have very poor semen quality. They have gone ahead to have children of their own. So, like I said earlier, there is practically no type of infertility that you cannot find a solution. Now, for those who are older, like if you do a vasectomy, for instance, it's obvious that no sperm cells will come out in the ejaculate. We can go into the testicles and collect sperm cells and also forcefully inject into the eggs. And there are also men, because of one form of surgery or the other, where they ejaculate but the sperm does not come out. Instead, it goes into the bladder, what we call retrograde ejaculation. All those kind of cases can also be helped. Now, in terms of social lifestyle changes, alcohol, use of drugs, there are some who have medical conditions like diabetes, hypertension. You can change the type of drugs they are using, or if properly managed, they can go ahead and still have children of their own.
Okay, well, thank you. I was just wondering, sorry, Dr. Wada, you are itching to say something, but maybe just take this along. I was going to ask Mohudu and, in fact, the other guests. Is there any medical truth to what we sometimes hear that if people do take drugs or palm wine, can use that to boost their... I'm sure you must have... it's a social occurrence. Yeah, is there any medical truism to that with regard to taking the drugs or palm wine? Usually, you say the young man who's just married now, give him drugs to take.
I think there's really no scientific basis to that practice. It's one of these systems we have in our community, but in terms of what the science know, there's no basis to that. I think I also want to go and just sort of follow on what my colleague mentioned here, that when you're looking at reversing some of the cause of infertility, it's also important that as men and as a country, we make the investment that are required in terms of even preventing it in the first place. I think it's really critical that we recognize that our habits, both sexual habits as well as lifestyle habits, are actually very, very central to what may be a problem for us in the future. So simple basic technology, for example, if you are to have sex, use a condom, or don't have sex, unprotected sex with partners you don't know. So those are things we've said for a long time. Of course, sometimes the focus was very heavy on HIV, but the collateral issues around unprotected sex are still very much there. Again, the big issues around drug abuse is becoming a big issue now in the country. There are many knock-on impacts on fertility around that. So I think the messaging is really that to us as a people, to our young men, even as we grow up, recognize that a problem that you fix it today. Don't go and create a situation where 10 years down the line, with the case of infertility. Because absolutely, like the professor of sociology mentioned, we're actually seeing significant increased cases. For some of us, when we're in medical schools, there were few, but right now, depending on the study you look at, there are some that are suggesting 1 in 2. That's for every 2 cases. It's actually a male factor. So clearly there's something happening, and I think it's really great that NTA is driving a program like this to pass a message out there.
Dr. Wada, are there certain foods that impede male fertility? And therefore, are there certain kinds of foods that could also boost male fertility?
That's a very difficult question, but I will attempt to say it. The only link we have, not necessarily male, is that a certain part of Nigeria, there's a predisposition to multiple births in the West. That we've been able to try and associate slightly with some kind of foods which contain female hormones, estrogens, and so on, like yam. Yeah. But apart from that, I cannot, off the cuff of my head, say what a man can eat to make him more fertile. But this portion, I would like to emphasize one of the points raised by my colleague, that sexually transmitted diseases are for both men and women. One of the things we are at fault with is that we look at women in terms of, oh, maybe she has sexually transmitted. You can't have it without a man being part of the story. So men are as affected or as guilty, if you like, as women. And that key prevention is sexual behaviors right from puberty onwards in terms of the protections to do. Foods, the one I can imagine will be obesity, things that make you so fat. Have you seen those sumo wrestlers? Have you seen that everything of theirs is warmed up all the time? So the weightier a man is, and a woman, the more heat you build up, the more, when you're
more damage
you cause. That is the word to use. I look at food in that light, putting on weight, and this should be avoided. People should try.
But people used to have fattening rooms in those days.
For women.
All right.
Wrongly, of course. Wrongly, of course. That culture is gone now, I think. Yeah.
And now let's look at what Nigerians are saying. Some have been making their own contribution via to it. And we have Law Alpha C. Male infertility is an issue rarely discussed in our climate, and that is why many men have ignorantly resorted to poor dietary habits like daily drinking chilled alcohol beverages like beer, and thereby reducing their potency.
Now, my couple has this twin. A couple having infertility issues should approach a medical facility for proper treatment. But if at the end of the day a child doesn't come, I will advise the said couple to adopt as many children as they would like.
Festus Akimbo, well, thank you NTA for raising the discussion of male infertility, which is an important issue that gets no recognition simply because the world of infertility is around women. Male infertility is a growing problem in Nigeria, and adequate infertility care will help addressing it.
Chris Simeon, it's hormonal imbalance, psychological influence, and according to him, spiritual attack could be the cause of male infertility. Men suffering from infertility should seek divine counseling and medication. Good morning, Nigeria. Spiritual attack as a factor in... none of you raised that.
Alaji Musa, that's
Neither Professor Osman. Professor Osman, the sociologist, he didn't raise the issue of spiritual attack.
Well,
say they send some arrows, you know.
Help. Head-seeking behavior.
Okay.
That's why you can delay head-seeking behavior. So you assume that
somebody attacking you, and it's not true. Somebody can attack you.
Okay, Alaji Musa Mohammed Hadej, sometimes the case is not as severe as the male sperm count is low, but the couple don't follow the due process of solving it. Men will not open up to their partner, especially for diagnosis.
Delay Jack Solomon, the major causes of infertility in Nigeria are sexually transmitted infections and hormonal abnormalities. Effort is made in arriving at a proper diagnosis and adequate treatment given where causes are treatable.
All right, Usman Banikantu, the issue of infertility among couples has been causing problems in many marriages. For fertility tests should be introduced before marriage for solve in eventuality, because artificial option of having a child is not considered as biological by many.
Delay Jackson again, this is the last one we are taking, and it says that patients suffering from infertility should be adequately counseled and assisted. Reproductive techniques may be suggested. However, procedure as at now is beyond the reach of the average Nigerian citizen. Centers where such facilities are available should be subsidized by the government to reduce costs. Dr. Wada, is it very costly?
Well, compared to average earnings in Nigeria to some extent, but its cost to me is cheaper in Nigeria than many countries of the world. I think that also as more people become aware and use it, the overhead cost will be shared by many more in the population, and the way it's going down. At this moment, more and more people are taking it up, and I can see the cost flattening out over time.
But I think it's important for the audience to also recognize that it's important to present, because sometimes what is required may even be basic. It may just be a course of good antibiotics. So what my colleague has described is actually the far end, when you are now going into the real deep IVF and all the more complex technologies. So, but I think generally, if you were to look at a percentage of, say, patient presenting, the bulk of them actually can be managed quite simply. I think the bottleneck is actually getting couples that are struggling to have children in the facility to get help.
Seek help. It may not be the top end they need. It may be something much simpler.
All right. Dr. Ibrahim Wada, would like to thank you, of course, along with the other guests. Dr. Ibrahim Wada is President of the Association of Fertility and Reproductive Health in Nigeria. Always great having you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
Also, Dr. Obohodo Idoko, Medical Director, Society for Family Health. We appreciate you being with us on the program this morning. And Dr. Kayode Wende, Medical Director, Fresh Springs Fertility Center, based here in Abuja. Thanks a lot for being around. And a consultant urologist who is of the surgery department at Jos University Teaching Hospital, Dr. Cletus Akbayak. Thanks a lot for being with us on the program. Earlier, we had Professor Professor Samsma is of the National Open University. So that does it for our conversation segment. Let's go over now to our sports